Hello and welcome to yet another one of our powerful group SFT tapping events. Today, Jen, we are blowing the lid off conspiracies. I'm Marvin Schneider.
And I'm Jen Ward. Hi, everybody.
We've got an ongoing program of these group tapping events because, well, we're at a certain point in human history where we're really pushing to get 8 billion people into higher consciousness and experience universal empowerment. And it's a it's a lot of work.
Absolutely. And it has been a lot of work for lifetimes, and a lot of people who have been going through struggles and just fighting their own life, and all these things they happen where they feel like they're under a dark cloud or they're cursed or whatever. It's not like that at all. You've been fighting a good fight for the upliftment of all of humanity. And so that's just the balance for the light and love you bring to the world right now.
Hmm. Um, the interesting thing is that the more we do the work in our broader mission to uplift all of humanity, the more we're doing energy work in the intersection of politics and collective, the organization of the collective and the behavior of the collective. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of
Mhm.
people, particularly in the spiritual community, prefer that, spiritual people just sit in a Zen, lotus position and just isolate themselves and be indifferent to what's going on in the broader collective. But we don't. And unapologetically, we are here to uplift all of humanity. And what that means is that we need to make a big push because we are literally shifting humanity from this position to this position. And it takes a lot of momentum, effort, and force to push in energy in that direction because there's a lot of effort directed towards sort of holding us in a lower state of consciousness. And that's what we're here to do is we are doing everything that we can to dissipate all of the negative impacts in energy and to promote a better world.
I'm glad you brought that point up because through the years, if I've ever addressed anything about politics or had an opinion, for me, they're not opinions. I see things in energy. I don't have opinions. Opinion is a facts, an agreement of a consensus on something. That's what an opinion is. But seeing stuff in energy is seeing the truth before anyone else does, or if it doesn't matter, you're not swayed by what other people say. So a lot of people have attacked me through the years for speaking up about things I see in politics and saying you're not being spiritual because you're not staying away from that. Well, well, if you're going to address higher consciousness and that is your actual true intention, you're going to go into the energy where it's most congealed and congested and needs attention. So flowers and lofty visions don't need to be addressed because they are at peace. So those who are just focusing on lofty intentions, it's good that they hold space for that lofty intentions, but it's almost like a form of spiritual elitist where they're there to maintain a status quo of what's understood as spirituality, but they're not challenging and to go into deeper dimensions or expound it anyway. And let me just say this. I sound like Bernie Sanders. Let me just say this, people. The nature of energy is to always expound. So once you sit on your laurels and you wait for that inner peace, and then that's it. That inner peace is only inner peace if it keeps fluid and keeps expounding. Heaven is a stagnant state of consciousness, the way that it's understood, because you can't have just still energy and not have it stagnate. It's the same principle as water. Water will stagnate if it's not moving. Same thing as energy. So for those who've been sitting back on their laurels and just enjoying the peace, it's not enough anymore.
Well, so here's the thing. If and you're specifically addressing spiritual people at the moment, we'll address the broader collective in a second. But for those that are consider themselves to be spiritual, and we're kind of more in the New Age aspect rather than mainstream religion, because I don't consider that to be terribly spiritual. It's religion, and that's what it is, but I don't consider it to be terribly spiritual. So for those that are sort of sitting there and looking for this inner peace, good luck with that, because there's a whole lot of stuff going on around the periphery that will interrupt your experience of that inner peace, unless for 24/7 you're sitting in this lotus position, in this zen-like state, completely disconnected from physical reality. So for those of us that are spiritual, that actually do have a physical body and do connect in the physical world as well, cannot be indifferent to what's going on and the challenges that are around us. And that's why we do the work.
Okay, so yes, and here, so it's too lofty to talk about people who are just meditating. Use a nuts and bolts concept of family. So people who want to ascribe to family, even families, the concept of family needs to change. In the 60s, it was a mommy and a daddy and 2.5 kids and a picket fence and a dog and what that was the family unit. But now his consciousness is expanded. It could be two mommies visiting daddy. It could be uncles and transgender children, and it can be all these different myriads. The concept of family needs to change as consciousness changes. And that's a problem that's happening in society. They refuse to allow their constructs of family, government, life expound.
So, Jen, you've just offended every conservative on the planet. But
that's okay,
because
they offend me too.
Their view of family is exactly grounded. I was going to grounded in the concept of probably the mid 1950s in America is probably about the pinnacle of that version of family, and they're desperately trying to preserve that tradition of family. But the practical reality is that everything you just said, Jen, about two mummies, a visiting dad, and any other combination of those things is a more inclusive, progressive version of that. But those that are on the conservative end of the spectrum, and particularly the more extreme right end of that spectrum, are doing everything possible not to be inclusive in that family. Now, we're going to bring family back into the conversation. Today's tapping event is entitled Blowing the Lid Off Conspiracies. And there's two aspects to this that I want to address. One is conspiracy theories, which is just a whole bunch of stuff that creates mistrust and doubt and lies, and it's just uncomfortable. So those are conspiracy theories. And then there are actual conspiracies. And a conspiracy is nothing more than a group of people, coming together, probably generally in some kind of a secret agenda, pursuing something which is irregular, illegal, or in other ways not, within mainstream acceptable behavior. So we're going to be addressing those two things. Now, Jen, the reason why we're addressing conspiracies today and blowing the lid off conspiracies is one of the things that is holding a lot of people away from higher consciousness is a deep-seated mistrust of government and authority. And conspiracies and conspiracy theories is one of those things that is feeding into that mistrust. And it is particularly amplified by those on the more conservative right-wing end of the political spectrum, but the spectrum of thought around more conservative views, limited government, no government, those kinds of things, because there's a deep-seated mistrust, and we need to get beyond that.
Absolutely. And what people who I just perceive linearly don't understand is there's a psychic stream. Here we do taps with the psychic streams of energy. There is so much charged energy built up around mistrust and paranoia and people wanting to know their truth. It's actually, think of this as a psychic ocean that people who are start to question their own understanding of themselves and their position in the world, through that mistrust, they tap into this nefarious sea of energy, which is psychic streams that are built up by crazy people, passionate people who want to break out of the ideology that this world is instructed in. But what's happening is it's such a nefarious thing that it's used as a weapon instead of a means to awaken people to their own individuality. So that weaponization of questioning life, questioning your constructs that keep you confined as an individual, need to be released and purified so that people are free to question and to have a voice and to not feel like they're targeted or ostracized for wanting to know more about who they are as an individual being.
I think there's something important that you said. It's important to have a questioning mind, to be open-minded, and but where that becomes weaponized is when you then get into this paranoia that everything is a conspiracy. And the other thing that always strikes me with those that are very conspiratorial by nature is that it almost becomes an obsession. And then there's a lot of stories and lies that get told and repeated, and all it does is muddies the water. And because no one then knows, there's no clean truth, because they're constantly dancing around shadows, fighting shadows. Everything's a shadowy. There's no light here. There's nothing to be plainly seen. By the way, we're not political. I just want to make that point at all. We're not political. The only agenda that we have is to assist 8 billion people into this state of higher consciousness, universal empowerment. And the only thing about that is that universal empowerment, such described, is usually at the opposite end of the spectrum of those that have a very conservative leaning, right-wing leaning. That's where our work intersects with politics. Not that we're political, it's just that we're dealing with the interaction of the collective. And there's an ideology that is around universal empowerment, and there's the antithesis of that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are very heavily grounded in the conservative right-wing end of the spectrum that represent the antithesis of higher consciousness, universal empowerment. That's where we're at.
Babies, and I grew up as a Jesus lover. I mean, my connection with Jesus ever since childhood has been very strong. That's never wavered. What's wavered is it's expounded, so it's not just Jesus that I listen to and stuff. And there's other vantage points of truth that resonate with Jesus's work. And when you are more aware, when you're not protecting your boundaries, you'll see the truth between all those who speak about truth and higher consciousness. It's not just coming out of Jesus's mouth. It's coming out of a lot of avatars' mouths. So when you can see the commonality there, it's easier to see the commonality and connection to all truth advocates.
All right, Jen, we're one tap in and we need to pause and do some commentary and provide some context. Why did we start off with Santa Claus, for God's sake, when we're talking about conspiracies?
What's interesting is each one of these taps people is afforded years and years of history, research. So I've researched this whole concept of Santa Claus, and being someone who vividly remembers being a child of that age, there's a point where Children have an inner compass when they come here. They trust their own sense of truth until these societal mandates or customs pulls them away from their inner compass. And one of them is Santa Claus, because it's a child's first universal conspiracy theory if you're Christian. So
Well, hang
think
on.
about it.
So it's not that one's actually not a conspiracy theory. That one is actually a conspiracy.
A literal conspiracy. Because think about it. Your parents are in on it. Your older children, all your family members are in on it. Your church is in on it. All of the department stores are in it. Even the news media. The news media, they report on where tracking Santa's sleigh. And so it's like, how can a kid listen to their inner compass when all this is telling them that Santa is in a sleigh somewhere? So
the whole Santa thing is the original conspiracy. And so if we're going to be addressing conspiracies being the thing that is causing a lot of distrust of government authority and various other things, we're going to have to address the ultimate conspiracy, which is Santa. Sorry, Santa, you're dusted.
No, but Santa exists on the astral plane. I visit him all the time, so don't be dissing on Santa on the astral plane.
I need to address that one for a second. So one of the real breeding grounds of the conspiratorial mindset has to be the family. And so if you're growing up in a family that is very conspiratorial to begin with, and all you ever hear from mum and dad is all about those communists that are running the government and some sort of secret agenda, and these aliens that are coming down to take over, and so that's all you hear. That's the breeding ground for perpetuating the conspiratorial mindset. And so families have a deep responsibility and not to do this, and to foster an environment where people, their charge, which is their children, are open-minded, but not in a distrustful way. And I need to make this point because there's going to be a lot of people out there, particularly on the conservative end of the spectrum and particularly on the right-wing end of the spectrum, that are going to say that the reason why conspiracies exist is because governments do secret things. And you guys don't have the term "kick your own goal," right? But for any non-American out there, those are the soccer or football, so all the Europeans out there know about this concept of kicking your own goal. It's basically, when you kick the ball into your own goal and give your opponent team, another goal. Governments have kicked their own goal to create the environment for conspiracies to foster, because particularly in America, but it happens everywhere in the world, there are so many secret agendas going on in the background that it's almost, they're assisting this distrust of authority and government figures. So there's that as well. I mean, if you want to dissipate conspiracies, you need to behave in an open, transparent way.
I need to address this, babies, because humans have been conditioned to believe there's only real and unreal. There's only the physical, and if it's not physical and it can't be proved with physical apparatuses, it's not real. Well, here's the thing. In energy, everything that you can imagine and conjure up is real. So even though it's not physically tangible, it's right at a sub-astral level. And so everyone who knows that there's space aliens and spaceships and stuff, and they're so frustrated and they feel insane because they're not tangibly visiting them, they have no proof. It's because they're on the subliminal. They're not physical, they're sub-astral. So there's room for all these different understandings. We don't have to waste so much energy fighting real or unreal. Just allow everyone to have their truth. And once you do that, you relax your atoms completely. completely. And then all the energy you're wasting trying to defend your truth, you don't have to waste that energy defending your truth anymore. And then you can use that energy to actually live your beingness. You know what I'm getting in energy? I'm getting if this protest wasn't as large and dynamic as it was going to be, it's because we're doing these taps now and it's not as necessary because we can do in energy what like a million people can do in protesting.
Well, we said before we were on air that we suspect that this protest may not be, and by the way, we're talking about the anti-Project 2025 protest in Times Square, which is, we coincided the recording of this for that event. And we're saying that even if the protest isn't that large and, loud and whatever, one of the reasons is because a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks has created the fertile ground to have a more forward moving progressive agenda where Donald and the whole MAGA chaos is just not having the momentum, and the more progressive and inclusive presidential race is basically creating a momentum and sustaining a momentum of its own accord. And one of the reasons is because that fertile ground has been laid over the last couple of weeks in all of the tapping events that we've been doing to create the conditions necessary in which self-sustained, progressive, forward-moving, positive agendas can take place.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to fathom that before we did all those taps and Kamala came forward, it's hard to believe that Donald had it all zipped up. All the incumbent, all the experts were saying that he had all the states and everything. And then we did those taps, and I've been watching an energy. I did not think it was Kamala. Before we did those taps, I tuned in, and even AOC, who's pretty perceptive in energy, she said people weren't going to accept Kamala. So then we did those taps, and it was like, whoa, it's like this tsunami of excitement and enthusiasm. And to me, that's evidence of the work we've been doing here. I need to say something else, too. Transgender is one of the most beautiful expressions of energy that you can physically have. It's like, sure, you can believe that you have to be pure female or pure male, but don't you dare demonize these beautiful souls who are able and earned through all their understanding of life and all their expressions of life to embrace both their male energy and their female energy. How dare you? How dare anyone demonize them and allow them to feel anything but sacred?
And Jen, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to defeat Project 2025 and the whole MAGA thing, to ensure that we do preserve and reinstate the guardrails of accountability, integrity, and truth in the governing process.
In a matter of speaking, these idiots who wrote down this Mein Kampf of lower consciousness did us a favor and shown us how nefarious their intentions really are. Because it was a conspiracy theory. I've known for at least a decade what was going on underneath the current of government right now with that. I've known about it, but until they put it into a document, we couldn't call them on this. So this is actually an upgrade in a way. Thank you, idiots.
So, and by the way, can I just say that wasn't a conspiracy theory? That is the conspiracy. The conspiracy is that there are a whole bunch of people operating collectively in a secret agenda to hijack universal empowerment. Call it democracy if you really want, but that's the conspiracy. That's right. That's not the conspiracy theory. And the thing about Project 2025 is that they've blown the lid off this being a conspiracy theory. What they've now uncovered is the full-blown conspiracy.
So that's an upgrade in a way. And you know what that does, Marvin? You know what that does, babies? It takes what you were just talking about. It takes any issue from being a conspiracy theory to actually being a conspiracy where it can actually be addressed. So it takes it out of the nefarious psychic realms that I was talking about and brings it into heart, nuts, bolts, something to address.
So here's the thing. I don't know how the American political system works, being a non-American, but in Oz and in any parliamentary democracy that I'm aware of, there's a thing called question time in Parliament, which is the process in which the government is questioned about what it is that they're doing, and that's the way that you create transparency, so that we don't have to have conspiracies behind closed doors, because everything that the government is doing, what they're spending money on, what their programs are, what their policies are, is all out in the open for everyone to see in plain sight. And it's when things then get put behind closed doors and it becomes a secret agenda, that's the problem.
Well, actually, in America, what's happened is all those who are truthful and want that have been shut down. The media has been shutting down truth. They do fluff stories and like blow smoke up, personalities.
I need to say something here. So there's a very complex dynamic between government and individual sovereignty, particularly in America, and it's so fascinating for me as a non-American to observe what's going on. So here's the thing. I'm fairly certain that as you were writing that tap, Jen, you were talking about government and policies of government that directly contravene individual sovereignty. And I'm fairly certain that you are talking about women's right to choose as being one example of that. And it's a great example, but it's just one of many examples. So here's the thing. On the conservative end of the political spectrum in America, at least, and I'm fairly certain elsewhere as well, the idea of small government not interfering in individual sovereignty is one of these core values of the conservative side of the political agenda, right? And so here's the stupidity of it. As much as the conservatives want small government, they then nevertheless, in whatever government they do want to form, they want to make sure that they are contravening individual sovereignty left, right, and center. And the other point that I want, and so that's the absurdity of that position that the conservatives take. The other thing that I want to say is, if you value small government, you better make sure that the collective, the people that governments are governing on behalf of, have a degree of self-accountability so that small government can actually exist. Because without self-accountability, you do need someone, and often it is a little bit heavy-handed, to come in and enforce some societal norms. And if you don't like that, conservatives, you'd better make sure that the broader collective has a level of accountability. We call that higher consciousness. So come on board with us. Stop dicking around the conservative agenda and start getting on board with higher consciousness. This is where the work's taking place. It must be hard work to maintain a constant state of conspiratorial vigil. And it must be chaotic, and it must be a living hell being just constantly mired in one conspiracy theory after another. I actually don't know how people do it. I don't know how they get any inner peace at all.
But here's the thing. That's a mechanism of feeling out when you're safe and whatever. So in energy, I'm pretty expansive. I take in, a lot of awareness. But then when something comes in, I pay attention to what's coming in. And then I address it in energy. So people who only live in the linear realms, they don't have that ability to address it in energy. It's either attack or be attacked, which is a very, very low destructive way to exist.
I think what you're saying there is a lot of people that do have a conspiratorial mind and are mired in conspiracy theories. One of the very uncomfortable aspects of that is that they have no resolve. So so they have this sort of the tin hat syndrome. They're constantly looking for these shadows. They have no resolve, and that must be a very destructive and chaotic existence. So, but here the resolve is to do the SFT taps. If you're concerned about something, and we're talking about government conspiracies, but it doesn't have to be government, at all. Whatever conspiracy that you're concerned about, do the SFT, do the energetic cleanse on that conspiracy, either a real conspiracy or a conspiracy theory, and give yourself some resolve, for Christ's sakes. Move on and now become a productive member of the collective. Thanks for coming. There you go. By the way, that advice was for free. You don't have to spend millions of dollars on psychiatrists and psychologists. Just do the work and we're all good to go.
And here's one little other way of looking at it, as great as that one is. Think of the human consciousness without tapping into the intangible realms being like a prison sentence. Think of the concept of going to prison, how you have to watch. Everyone knows that when you go to prison, you watch your back. You don't trust anybody. You attack the first person who attacks you. That's how people are living out here in consciousness. You've got to get out of your own prison so you don't have to worry about being shanked every 2 seconds.
Off camera, we're also talking about this idea that if you mistrust pretty much everything, right, you've got nowhere to go, you've got no anchor, no center, you're not grounded, everything, there's shadows everywhere. Where do you turn? And then so what you're doing is you turn to like-minded people, and then you form a bit of a clique, and then we're back into us versus them, right? Because it's like only me and a small group of my closest friends know the truth, and everyone else is wrong. And so this just it's self-perpetuating. It feeds on itself. It's like how hate feeds on hate and fear feeds on fear. It's the same thing. And so we need to cut it off and give people some peace and resolve, so you don't have to keep looking for shadows, and we can move forward in higher consciousness.
It's a really good point, babies. They got to stop coagulating like that.
Babies, I think it was fascinating how we started with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and then got into the real nuts and bolts of things. And so, we ducked, we weaved, we bobbed and we weaved, but we got through and blasted out conspiracies and conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's a good job. It feels really complete, the work we're doing now. And maybe some people will stop being so polarized on one side of the spectrum and the other. You and I represent different polarities, and when we can communicate, it's juicy, babies.
So the last couple of taps around the idea of creating conspiratorial lies to deflect from some underlying truth and to distract, I think really got to the heart of the issue. And the thing that is always disappointing to me is that people that should know better, it's one thing to have people like Donald and, assholes create conspiratorial lies. It's a completely different thing when, seemingly smart people then pick up on that and just run them to ground. And it's just a distraction.
It's actually morally despicable. These people who are touting this lies about, the election and everything are from Harvard, Yale, and higher echelon of schools. They know what they're doing, and they're consciously doing it. So
anyway, we're glad to do the work so that all of humanity can clear the deck of this nonsense and create the fertile ground for higher consciousness, because that's what we're doing here. In a lot of these tapping events, we're dealing with specific issues that are all connected and creating the fertile ground in which higher consciousness can germinate. Because, at the moment, everyone, I don't know too many people that don't want higher consciousness, joy, love, abundance, freedom, health, success, except for those that really benefit from, chaos and power, the use of control and power. But, the vast majority of 8 billion people on the planet do want to experience joy, love, abundance, freedom, health, success, and all of the other descriptors that you use, Jen. So what we're doing is creating the fertile ground to allow that to germinate.
Yes, the problem with everyone wants, agrees to like loving their children and their family, and they want that peace and whatever. But where they get in the weeds is with the ego and the mental realm, where they have decided that joy, love, abundance, freedom, health, success comes through a one family, an archetype type of what that is. If they can let go of their archetype of where joy, love, abundance, freedom, health, success comes from, they can have it, but they're holding everyone into the suffering that their construct commands.
If you like this content and you appreciate the work that we're doing to uplift all of humanity and to help heal your body, mind, and soul, please consider becoming a Jenuine Healing premium content subscriber. Simply jump onto the Jenuine Healing website, jenuinehealing.com with a J, and click on the purchase button on the top menu. Scroll down, there's a premium content option. Click on that, sign up. It's a simple monthly plan for $20 a month, and you will have access to all of the premium content that we put up on the Jenuine Healing website. We look forward to catching you next time, and bye for now.